For the next one, really when I'm adding these things, I have to have like radical terms, which means the same root with the same radicand. So here I have a square root of 3, and here I have a square root of 3. So those are like radical terms because it's exactly the same. This one is the square root of 2, which is not the same. So those are not like radical terms. I can only combine like radical terms. So right here, a 3 root 3 minus a 5 root 3 is going to give me a negative 2 square root of 3. And it's just like what we would do with variables. We add or subtract the coefficients, and the radical part stays the same. And then this 4 square roots of 2 just tags along with the rad. I can't do anything else because I don't have any more like radical terms. For this one, I don't have any like radical terms, but I can simplify some things. So the square root of 27 I can rewrite as 9 times 3. The 2 square root of 3 I can't simplify. But then this 75 I can rewrite as 25 times 3. Getting a little ahead of myself there. And now with this first one, the square root of 9 is 3. So when it goes to the outside, it's going to multiply with this 2. The first thing you do when you get out of the radical is you multiply. So I do the 2 times the 3, which is a 6. And there's still a 3 trapped underneath here. Plus 2 root 3. Minus, here the square root of 25 is a 5. So there's a 5 on the outside. The 3 is still trapped. And now what happens is I see that I have all like radical terms. So I can combine these. 6 plus 2 is an 8. Minus the 5 is a 3. So this is going to give me a 3 root 3. Again, I add or subtract the coefficients. The radical part stays the same. With this one, I'm just distributing or foiling here. So I'm going to distribute the 3 to each term. 3 times 5 is a 15. 3 times the square root of 3 is 3 square roots of 3. Remember, I multiply the stuff on the outside by the stuff on the outside, the stuff underneath the radical by other stuff that's underneath the radical. Okay? The stuff that's outside the radical symbols can't associate with the stuff that's inside. So when I do the second piece of distributing here, the square root of 3 times 5 is just going to be 5 square roots of 3. Again, I can't multiply that 5 and that 3 because one's inside and one's outside. But then this last piece, the square root of 3 and the square root of 3, I can multiply those numbers because they're both underneath the radical. So 3 times 3 is 9. So it's the square root of 9. And now when I combine like terms here, I've got some like radical terms. I've got 15 plus 8 square roots of 3. Plus the square root of 9 is a 3. So now I have more like terms to combine. So when I do this, it gives me an 18 plus 8 root 3. And that's it. So make sure you finish simplifying and combining like radical terms. For the next one, again, I'm going to distribute. So I distribute the 3 root y. When I multiply stuff on the outside times stuff on the outside, so 3 times a negative 1 is 3 times 2 is a 6. So it's going to be a 6 root y. And then it's going to be a minus 3 root y squared. Again, since both y's are underneath radicals, I can multiply them. And now I distribute the second piece of this thing. That's going to give me a plus 2 square root of 2y. And then the last piece is going to give me a minus square root of 2y squared. Again, they're both underneath the radical symbol, so I multiply them. And now I look for like radical terms. I don't see any. I can simplify the square root of y squared. And here the square root of y squared. So that's going to give me 6 square root of y minus 3y plus 2 square roots of 2y minus y square roots of 2. And when I look back through this, I still don't see any like radical terms. So that's all I have to do for that one. For this one, these are conjugates. Remember, when I'm multiplying conjugates, I can take a little bit of a shortcut. I could just do the first terms and the last terms, giving me a 16 and a minus square root of 36. I could just do those last terms because of what's going to happen here when I actually do the full distribution. The middle terms that it gives me is a minus 4 root 6 and a plus 4 root 6. And what happens is those terms are going to cancel each other out. So I'm left with 16 minus 36, the square root of 36, which is 6, which is just going to give me a 10. And that's it. And that's the magical thing that happens when I multiply conjugates, is that all the radical terms disappear. And we need that for problems like these guys. With this one, I want to rationalize the denominator. So I have to multiply it by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. Because I don't want any radical terms left in my denominator. In the numerator, I'm going to distribute. That's going to give me a 2 root 3 plus the square root of 18 over the square root of 9, which is 3. And now I can simplify this. The square root of 18 is the square root of 9 times 2. The square root of 9 is a 3. So I get 3 square roots of 2. And that's it. Now the denominator is rationalized. In this one, we still want to get the denominator so it doesn't have any radical terms left. But since I have a binomial this time, the only thing that will eliminate all the radical terms from a binomial is if I multiply by the conjugate. So here I want to multiply by the conjugate. Remember, the denominator is 3 plus the square root of 5, so the conjugate would be 3 minus the square root of 5. Okay, it's the exact same terms, but with a minus sign. And again, whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. I have to multiply by a form of 1 here. So now I have to distribute. I have to FOIL. When I do that in the numerator, I distribute the 4. It gives me a 12 minus 4 root 5. When I distribute the negative square root of 2, it gives me a negative 3 square root of 2 and a plus square root of 10. In the denominator, I can take a little bit of a shortcut here if I'd like to with my distributive property because they're conjugates, so I know that the middle terms are going to cancel. I'm going to go ahead and do the complete distribution here. So I'm going to distribute the 3. That's going to give me a 9 minus 3 square root of 5. And now I'm going to distribute the square root of 5. That's going to give me a plus 3 square root of 5 minus the square root of 25, which is a 5. And now I'm going to simplify this a little bit. In the denominator, the negative 3 root 5 and the plus 3 root 5 cancel each other out, so they're gone. In the denominator, in the numerator, I don't have any like terms here. I don't have any like radical terms. I don't have anything underneath a square root that I can simplify. So I've got to leave this as a 12 minus 4 square root of 5 minus the 3 square root of 2 plus the square root of 10. There's nothing else I can do there. And now underneath, the 9 minus 5 just gives me a 4. The last thing I can check for is to see if each term has a common factor, something I can divide out of each one. But in this case, they don't. All right, it looks like I might, but remember the things that are underneath the radicals can't associate with stuff on the outside. So the 4 and the 2 that's underneath the radical, or the 4 that's with the 10, those can't reduce. So I leave this one just the way it is. For the last one here, again, I want to multiply by the conjugate. Because I have a binomial here, the only way to eliminate all radical terms is to multiply by the conjugate. So I'm going to multiply by 6 plus the square root of 2. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. And again, I'm going to distribute. It's like these things are in parentheses, so I'm distributing. I'm going to distribute that 3 in the numerator. That's going to give me an 18 plus 3 square roots of 2. And then I'm going to distribute the negative square root of 3, so that's a negative 6 square root of 3 minus the square root of 6. In the denominator, again, I could take the shortcut, but I'm going to go ahead and distribute all the way. So I distribute the 6. That's a 36 plus 6 square roots of 2. I distribute the negative square root of 2. That's going to be a negative 6 square root of 2 minus the square root of 4, which is a 2. And now when I combine like radical terms down here, these middle terms cancel out. In the numerator, there's not really anything I can do here. I don't have any like radical terms. I don't have anything that I can simplify out of each of these radicals. So I've got to leave this one exactly the way it is. The denominator, I can do the 36 minus the 2, which gives me a 34. And then the last thing I can check for is any common factors to divide this and to reduce the fraction, but there are none. So that's my answer. Okay?